This conference will now be recorded.
Right. So we need a subscription, we need a resource group, then we can create the resources that I said since the beginning. So I'm just creating one resource group, maybe test RG. Okay. And the region you must create always to your nearest operations center. So that must be taken care. Tagging we will see separately. Tagging is a very important component to track the billing, to generate the reports. This will help multiple dimensions. We will see that. So I'm just creating that resource group. Resource group is just a logical entity. For resource group, there is no charge. It's just a logical entity. It does not charge you. Like if you are creating 10 resource group, 100 resource group, doesn't matter. As long as you don't create the resource, you don't get the bill. It's something is a kind of container, a logical container in which you create the services. So now I'm going to create the virtual machine. Then we will move with the rest of the topics, what we left off. So resource group first, and then naming convention should be followed that I discussed yesterday, right? If it is a production, it should start with a PP, and then if it is a staging server, it should start with SS. If it is development server, it should be DD. Something, and then the location, then project, then the server count. That's a usual case in every environment that we follow in our environment. But I'm going to use a random name, example SQL VM01. Okay, that's enough. I mean, we cannot, no need to talk every day the same standards, right? But for every service, you must follow that. And the region must be always nearest to your operation center. That also there. Then availability set we yesterday discussed. So I'm not talking about it, but I'm claiming it to show that how it works. Uh, VM set. Come on. VM set. Okay. And then this security type we will talk about in the networking. We will see that. Images. So what kind of operating system you're looking for, you just select what you wanted. We discussed on this one, right? We have a lot of images as you required. So whatever the image your business needed, just you select and then keep it there. And the family, computing family, we have a general purpose and compute optimized, memory optimized, storage optimized, graphic optimized. So each one has its own purpose. You need to know what is the purpose of the VM you're going to create. Is it a database server? Is it a web server? Is it a data warehouse server? Right? Is it a pre-prod server? All matters which family of computer you choose it. What purpose of the VM you need to know it. If not, don't create the VM, as simple as it is. Because if you load the VM into a different family, you don't get the respective performance model. Why? Because the family is created for respective deployment models. If it is database, you have to go to the memory optimized. If it is a web app server or any application related server, you should go to the computer optimized computers, right? So pre-prod should go to the general purpose, data warehouse should go to the storage optimized. So there are predefined families. You must load into the respective family based on the usage of the VM. Okay, so that must be known. If not, you unnecessarily spend money, but you don't get the performance. Right, inbound ports. So this inbound ports, we will spend good amount of time. No need to worry, we will see that. And licensing, if you have already on-prem environment and you wanted to claim the license, what you wanted to, like you have license, but you wanted to claim that in the cloud, like you see this one, 3,700. As soon as I click the licensing, then it will come down the value. The value is 3,100. 600 rupees are came down. That something is good amount, right? So on the overall, every month you are saving it overall a year, an overall big, huge resource like you have hundreds of VM, then you get to know, right? The actual saving will be very high. Right. Next is a disk. A disk is something very important for us. Why? Because the entire operations the entire operations depends on the disk. You are submitting the write capacity, read capacity based on the disk IO capacity. It matters how quickly the SQL Server can respond to your request from the disk. See, first the data is in the hard disk. SQL Server will get the instruction. The CPU will generate the plan. and the plan will be given to the storage engine. The storage engine will fetch the data out of the disk, and once the data is loaded into memory, the actual execution can be made. So these are all dependent. So if your disk is not good to load the data into the memory, when the storage engine got the request to pull out the data, then your SQL Server will be slow. So how do I know that? Basically, first go to the standard hard disk for all the pre-prod servers. Standard solid state disk drives are costly and the premium are more costly, in fact. So all pre-prods, we will create standard hard disk itself. Don't go for the SSDs directly. First go with a standard hard disk. You verify it's not scaling well. Okay, if you verify that it is not scaling well, then go for the SSDs basically. Okay, first look for the standard hard disk and verify it your disk IO is scaling well or not. We discussed how, I mean, I'm going to show that today as well. How your disk is scaling or not, how do you know? You will get to know within the product as well. You get to know from the OS task manager also. There are two ways to find. I'll quickly, I was talking about this yesterday at the end of the class, but the same, look at this. If you go to the activity monitor, in the activity monitor, disk IO will be shown for every file, whatever you're trying to do. Okay, so you can find for response time for every single operation that you're doing it. So topmost response time it is showing at the top, and temp_db there is a some temp_db file is reading or writing whatsoever. The IO, you see this one response time is 3 milliseconds. 3 milliseconds up to 10. Below 10 is absolutely great. Your IO is absolutely great. If the these values are going really high, then you need to look for your storage, IO capacity should be increased. That's so simple to find out, basically through the task manager from the SQL Server activity monitor also. First, deploy the VM under standard hard disk. If you see that there are disk IO requests are accumulating because of the response time, then go for the SSDs. So directly going to the SSDs actually not good option. For production, for some critical productions, you can go up to standard SSD. Premium SSD will double the VM cost. Absolutely, it will double almost, like 80%. Like if I'm paying $2, I'll pay $3.5 per hour. So it will almost double the charge. Premium SSD. Standard SSD is okay, but premium SSD you have to consider it. Really, is it required or not by looking at the IO request on the server. So when you practice, you always go to the standard hard disk. Standard hard disk means magnetic drives, like your laptop drive, your desktop drive, which is not a solid state disk. Okay, which is just a magnetic drive, which we don't scale well with the IO. So you don't need a super fast IO in the pre-prods, right? So solid state disk drives are not cheap. Basically, they are costly. So pre-prods can go with the standard hard disk mostly. If you production server should go to the standard solid state disk. Premium is something you have a very production workload is really high, and you are seeing the high batch rate every second. Then you see that you might look at the statistics, and if you if it evident that the SQL server is actually uh, requests are accumulating because of the IO issue, then go for the premium SSD. You need to look at the statistics, and if it is really required, then only go for the higher side. Else unnecessarily you'll pay the money. We will talk about the adding the creating extra disk, adding the existing disk. We will see that. I mean today itself. Networking tab I don't want to touch for now. So enable the boot diagnostics to read the, what is the reason why VM got hung in the background. We can find it using the boot diagnostics. Identity management, shutdown, this backup recovery, site recovery will covered in the storage. Auto shutdown will be covered in the automation. This is comes in the identity management. So we're not skipping that. Don't worry. And how you wanted to approach with the in terms of the machine patching or the OS patching on the VM. Do you wanted to get it updated automatically, or you want to do it manually? So I said yesterday it is a manual what we are doing in our environment. Advanced, we know that host group and PPGs, that is all that, right? Capacity reservations depends on, like your requirement model. You can reserve the resource. When you reserve, you get the more discount. 60% discount in fact. But once you pay off, you don't get the reimbursement. That is there. You're blocked for 3 years, but you used only for 2 years. 1 year is wasted. You should know that this is going to run for 3 years. That must be, it's your headache. You have to calculate that usage of that. Right. I'll create one more VM to discuss two parallel discussions. So let me quickly deploy this. I don't want to discuss anything. I quickly deploy because the same thing what I'm going to do. So availability set to show this. This is something I wanted to show it. That's why I'm putting the server under availability set. So which is fine. All defaults. Disk always go to the standard hard disk. So if you look at CGARs, every disk is encrypted. Every database is encrypted by default. Anything that is on the Microsoft infrastructure is encrypted, fully encrypted. You don't need to do the encryption basically. Some people do follow their encryptions, but by default, data is encrypted on the Microsoft platform. Your database is encrypted, your um, hard disks are encrypted, everything is encrypted, absolutely. You don't worry about the encryption. It is taken care by the Microsoft at the hardware layer itself. You see that every disk is encrypted with the platform managed key. You don't manage it. It is by default encrypted. So what you get through the encryption TDE, your data file log file is encrypted on the hard disk. Already hard disk is encrypted. So that way you're getting the protection. So networking we'll see. So I'm directly going ahead and creating the VM. Right, let's see the VM statuses. We will wait till this get deployed. Okay, first VM is up. It is said it is deployed, right? It's saying that it's still creating, but it won't update the status. The VM, you can see the status here. Oh, it's still creating. Right, it is running. See. So now I'm going to connect to this. How I'm directly connecting is something networking topic. We will block it. We'll open it. We will see all directional communication opening and blocking clearly. We will see that in the networking. But now let's move with the default connection method. Right. Okay, now File Explorer. If you go to the File Explorer here, you get one C drive, one temporary drive. What exactly the temporary drive? The PA, physical address extension. This drive will be used as a temporary RAM basically. So depends on your VM size, this drive size also will change. So the bigger the VM, the bigger the temporary drive is given. And this is by default SSD drive, and it is a free of cost. At free of cost, they are giving you with a VM. There is no extra cost for this VM. So do you know that PAE, right? PAE, and we have a physical address extension. So now if I go to here, uh, properties of the computer, there is something advanced settings. You'll find so advanced here setting. There is something you'll find it here. This is the one. Virtual memory. A paging file is an area on the hard disk that Windows uses as it for a RAM basically. So if you look at this 1 GB of out of this temporary drive, what is the drive it is being used for this? Um, if you look at this one, it use this system managed drive. Okay, it has a available space is 8 GB actually in fact, but it is using 1 GB. 1 GB currently allocated 1 GB. If you wanted to change that value, you can change it. What exactly this will do? Does anybody know what the paging drive will do? Paging drive is an area, see here, it is clearly saying that Windows uses as it if for a RAM. So Windows uses this disk as a RAM. Whenever the RAM that is given to the machine is completely occupied, look at this, 4 GB is given. 4 GB is completely occupied. Then it move the data to the PAE drive. So what exactly it does in the background? Let me explain. It is there with every server, every machine. So it comes with a based on the capacity of the drive. So you have a RAM, you have the hard disk. So RAM is completely occupied. It is fully occupied. Then what does it do? It moves the data to this PAE drive. Okay, and then it will write the data here. Whenever it is required, call back the data. So the system is under pressure on the RAM side. It will move the data, RAM data, some of the RAM data because it is under pressure to the PAE drive in the background, and then it will call the data when it is required the same data. So it is actually handling the memory pressure using the PAE drive. That is good. That is a good for the business. But what is the problem with that? Too much data is moving here is not good because RAM is super fast. A disk is not super fast, right? When it has to read that data, give it to the application, disk will be slow. It has to read from the disk and then give it to the application. So reading from the disk and giving it to the application is time taking process. So too much of data putting under PAE is a performance indicator. Like you will get the bad performance. So that's why it should be limited. Yes, we have a 1 GB. So if you wanted to change it, you can change it, of course, but don't change the value. Too big PAE values are not good for the performance. 1 GB or 2 GB temporarily, it is releasing the pressure from the memory usage because it is swapping the data to the PAE and then getting the data when it is required, but too much is not good. Why? Because if you are giving the too big room, you can set it if you want. If you are giving the too big room, it will try to move all of the data to the PAE drive. When it is have to required and give it to the application, it will pull the data, but pulling the data from the disk will be delayed process. So that is where the response time will go higher. So you should not give the bigger value to the PAE drive, PAE extension, PAE. You guys following what I'm trying to say? This is important, guys. These are all performance metrics you all need to aware of. You guys following, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was getting
Ravinder.
Yes, Ravinder.
Right.
to avoid that issue because the
Uh,
paging is more. Once we observe that to avoid that issue, so we increase the memory.
I didn't get you. Your voice is not clear. Is it this is Harini, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
asking. So if I'm asking like if that to avoid that issue, do
Hmm.
we increase? Do we add more memory to the server? Because
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, we will see that, we will see the PLE in the SQL Server, page life expectancy, like how long your page is staying in the buffer. If the PLE is clearing out within 300 seconds, like 5 minutes, then you have to go for expanding the RAM on the machine to serve the the memory pressure. So if too much of data is moving to PAE drive, which is not good, right? Drive is not like a RAM. RAM is super fast when it comes to the response. Drive is not as good as a RAM. So there you get the delayed response. So you should not give a big room for moving the data to the PAE drive. So that is about temporary drive. Why they are given for the paging drive. This is a paging drive by default to the product. So
okay,
anything that not only product for the OS, it uses this drive as a temporary RAM basically. So the bigger the value, the bigger the impact as you load the more data there. Okay. Right, let's move to the adding the drives. I need to use this VM for the SQL Server. We need a data drive, we need log drive, we need temporary drive, we need install drive also. Some people are following it. It all matters how people are building the machine. So now I have the VM called VM01. I wanted to add more drives on top of it. So adding the drive is an online operation. There is no downtime. Expanding the drive is you need a downtime, but adding the drive, you don't need any downtime. So go to the disk on the VM on which you wanted to add the drives. Under disk, you have the options to create, attach, and disk kind of. So just a minute, I'll just, right, maybe this is more visible. So now if you look at here under the disk, I have the option create, attach. I'm going to create the drives. So I'm going to create, first you must follow the VM name. It's mandatory, SQL VM01 underscore data. So this is a minimum convention you need to follow. Server name underscore data1, data2, something like that. And here you go to the standard solid state disk for the production, pre-prod standard hard disk, enough. And I'm giving 200 GB capacity or 250 GB, or let's keep it to 250 GB for data. So now again, the server name, I'll tell you why we need to follow the server name before we add up the disk name. When we have to expand, when we wanted to manage the disk after VM, after this creations, you need to identify it. How do you identify the based on the machine? Basically, we'll talk about, I mean, conventions must be followed, guys. I'll tell you why we need to follow. So then I'll go with the SQL VM01 temp DB and standard hard disk. Maybe let's go with 100 GB here as well, and install drive. So once I start creating fourth drive, it is not giving the option to create any more drives. Why? This size of the VM can support maximum of 4 drives only, not more than that. See, showing 4 of 4 attached disk. We will talk about this in the next VM creation. Every VM size can support certain number of disks. If it goes beyond it, you cannot create any more disks basically. Each disk can grow up to 32 TB. One single disk can grow up to 32 TB. You don't make that big drive, but it can be expandable up to 32 TB. That is a limitation of a single drive in the cloud, basically in the Azure cloud. So I'm adding 4 drives. As of now, if I go to this machine, if I go to the disk management, you don't have any actually drives as of now, because I did not save that yet. Let me show that how the disk will be get added to the VM once you save in the cloud. Come on, it's taking time. So now under disk management, you have only C drive and the temporary drive. This is a temporary drive and C drive. That's it. The other drives are not showing up yet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to save that. I added the drives good enough, but I did not save it yet, right? So I'm going to save this. As soon as I save it, these drives will show, this will show on the OS basically. So here, you see these drives are showing up here, right? So now I'm going to format it. So when you first initialize the drives, there are 2 formats to initialize the drive. One is the MBR and the GBT. Under MBR, data disk can grow up to only 2 TB. Though you can add more space, but you cannot extend it from the OS end. MBR master boot record, if you are formatting, initializing the drive in the MBR format, your disk can grow up to 2 TB only. If you wanted to grow beyond it, up to 32 TB, you must do the GPT format initialization. So GPT can grow up to 32 TB. So when you're initializing itself, you have to select that option. If you selected, you loaded the data, you cannot change it. It's not possible. You have to create alternate drive, migrate the data. There is a lot of process. There is a risk involved changing from MBR to GPT. So you have to decide your disk is going to go beyond 2 TB. If it is expectation, go under GPT format. These got initialized, right? Now I'm going to format them one by one, right? So you need to format. So it is a F drive it is taking, which is fine. To talk about the performance, there are many things, guys. We will format the SQL drives, data drive, log drive, temp drive in a 64 kilobytes instead of default. Default is a 8 KB basically. A page, SQL Server page is 8 KB, but 64 kilobytes is a one extent. If the SQL Server read an extent directly rather than page, it gives a more, when you have a too big data on the server, and if you are reading page by page, it will a time taking process. You read by extent, and then sort the data, what is required from that extent is a more easier for the system basically. That comes in the performance. This is something big topic in fact. The disk format also change your performance on the SQL Server. That SQL Server performance depend on many variants basically. It has a lot of things to talk about. But anyway, that is it's not a performance tuning to classes, right? We'll see that in the future. Right, as you're formatting, you can see the drives and the OS level. Okay, this they'll show up here. Right, you can see all of the drives. And if you look at here, you just label them according to the need, right? This is SQL data. These are all labels. This won't impact anything. You can change the label at any point of time if you want. SQL data, and this one 1400 GB. So I'll go with the SQL log, temdb, and install like this. So now you got the required drives. Assume a case that your drive is about to fill. This is the case. Adding the drives you understood now. How do you add it? You go to the respective VM on which you wanted to add the drive, extra drives, and then go to the disk, right, and create the disk. And then you add with the required capacity under you wanted to create a standard disk or a standard solid state disk or premium solid state disk. You can choose it when you are creating it. If I wanted to change it after the creation, disk performance tier, how do we change it? We'll talk about it. For now, you know how do we add a new drive to the VM. It is an online operation. There is no downtime on the VM to add a new drive basically. Now the case is like your disk is about to fill up. You loaded a lot of data and data is growing and it is went up to 95%. It is a time to extend it. What is the process to extend a drive? Let's talk about that now. So go to the like a VM on which you wanted to extend and go to the drive. There is something called size and performance. Here you can change it. So I'm trying to change the value to 300. It will not let me to do it. There is a problem. Changes to the disk can be made only when the disks are attached or managed virtual machine is deallocated. You have to deallocate the VM. So deallocation required a setting down the server, and you know you have to stop the VM and deallocate. So when the locks will be released on the disk, then you can extend a disk basically. So extending a disk in the Azure Cloud VM is required downtime basically. In AWS, small drives you can do on the fly. When it comes to the TBs of drive, there you don't need restart. But when you shut down the VM and extend, it will be so quick. If you wanted to extend a disk online, it takes quite a long basically. It won't reflect immediately. But that supports online disk expansion. AWS supports online disk expansion, but Azure does not. They don't allow. The reflection of the size is immediate. It won't take time. You take it to 10 TB to 20 TB straight away. It takes few seconds to reflect that size. Even in the AWS also it will reflect. But if you are going the online, 10 TB to 20 TB will take a day to expand, to a complete day. So no one will like wait for a day, right? So there also you have to shut down and detach the disk and then expand and attach. That way it is. Anyway, come back to the VM. I wanted to deallocate. How do I deallocate? What are the ways we have to deallocate? Select the VM and stop the VM. When you deallocate, there are multiple things will happen. So that you need to understand. What is a deallocation? What is a stopped? There will be interview question. So pay attention here. You have a public IP. Public IP, which is a dynamic public IP. By default, you'll get a dynamic public IP. You look at it. You click on the public IP. It is a dynamic IP address. It is a dynamic public. It is not a static. Dynamic means what? It can be changed. So I'm changing this. I'm picking up this current IP. This is what the IP. If I shut down this VM, I am stopping this VM, the SQL VM01. If I stop this one, it is asking preserve the IP anyway, but I'll tell you, like when you stop from here, it won't ask you. When you stop the VM like this, it does two things. One is stopping the VM first, then deallocate. When the VM get deallocated, see the RDP is lost. When the VM is deallocated, it releases the public IP, it releases CPU memory back to the cloud. Just shutting down the VM, like within the server, I can shut down the VM. It will go to stopped. When VM just stopped, it does not release anything from the VM. When you deallocate the VM, it releases CPU memory back to the cloud. It releases, and then it releases the logs also on the disk, and it will not delete the disk. That is a good thing. Only release the logs on the disks, and then come on, it is taking time. Yeah, it is deallocating now. It is stopped already. Now it is deallocating. It does two. Stopping and deallocation are two actions, in fact, not one. So once the VM got deallocated, you can expand it. But when you deallocate a machine, there are two background things will happen. CPU memory given back to the cloud. It won't log the CPU memory anymore. And also it releases the logs on the drives, whatever attached to the VM. But when you make it online, it will log the CPU memory again from the cloud, and then it will log the drives and come online. That way it is. It won't release the ownership, but it releases the logs. So if you go to the disks, there is a service called disks. Let me show this. See, which drive owned by which server, you can find it. This is the reason I was saying that every disk must be followed server name underscore the disk name. So these drives are owned by SQL VM01. I can see that owner of the disk. Though I deallocate the VM, the ownership will not lose. Only the locks on the disk will be released basically. So now stopped and deallocated. When the VM is deallocated, if the IP is public IP, you don't have a public IP. It is released. It is empty now. It is empty because it is dynamic. So if you deallocate the VM, there are two things will happen. The CPU memory given to the cloud, and also it release the public IP if it is dynamic. This will be interview question. What is the difference between the stopped and deallocation, VM deallocation? In the VM deallocation, it releases the CPU memory back to the cloud. Along with it, it will also release the public IP if it is dynamic. This is a statement you have to give it. In a stopped mode, VM does not release anything, even disk also basically. Disk locks also it won't release. It will keep the disk. If the VM is stopped, you cannot just extend a disk basically. You must deallocate. Go to the VM, go to the disk, and I wanted to extend the disk, all of the disk, assume a case. Data disk from 250 GB to 300. Now I can extend it 300. Okay. And also, if you're there are two things, guys. This is very important. Pay attention. I don't discuss this again. If you wanted to extend a disk, or you wanted to change the disk performance tier, when do we change the disk performance tier? Basically, when the disk is not scaling, when the disk is not selling with the current IO request, then you have to change the disk performance tiers from the standard hard disk to standard solid state disk, standard solid state disk to premium solid state disk. Changing the disk performance tier also needed VM deallocation, which means a downtime. You have a standard hard disk. Your disk IO is your response time is very low, which means that response time is going in hundreds that we have seen, right? So I'll also again, if it goes 100, you wanted to switch it to standard solid state disk, yes, you can do it now. You can expand it, you can change the disk performance tier parallelly, both at a time. It is possible. You guys getting? Two things need a deallocation. Changing the disk performance tier or expanding the disk, both required a VM deallocation, which is a downtime, right? To increase the disk IO performance, to increase the disk size, both the required separate down. If you're doing separately, Both of them require separate downtime. If you're doing both at one go, you don't need it. I'm changing it. Example, I wanted to change 300 GB solid state disk from hard disk to solid state disk, as well as I'm changing the disk size also. Both. I can do that. It did the job. So now it said successfully updated. Now you can see this drive, whatever is 250 standard hard disk, but if I refresh, it will change it to SSDC. It is expanded and it changed the disk performance tier also. That way you can do it when the VM is deallocated. Deallocation can be done for two reasons: changing the disk performance tier and changing the disk size also.
Ravi, it
So
won't take much time, right?
what much time I mean to say?
It
What
won't
what do
take
you mean?
much time, right, for changing. For downtime, I mean.
No, it won't take time. It won't take time. It does in minutes at most. If it is too big, right, it might take 1 or 2 minutes. That's it.
But for that, we need to take the approvals, right?
Yeah, approval is there. See, I'm telling you the process, how you do it. I mean, how you can do technically. The environment process you must follow. You have
Yeah.
to raise the CR and all that.
Yeah, general, I'm just asking. Okay.
It's technical discussion. So process-wise, you have to follow. There is no way that you can skip that. Now,
Ravi, one
yeah,
question. So where is the mapping between the drive letter to the disk name?
this is the name.
Yeah. So how do we know which drive letter is which disk name?
Size, only size is the one which will tell you that.
Oh,
The
okay.
size.
There is no way we can see in the dashboard the
No,
drive letter.
this can be any name here. It's just a identity for us. Disk name. In the VM, it can be any name. Doesn't matter. Only the size
Oh,
actually is going to tell you that which drive for what.
okay.
There is no tagging between this and OS drive letter and the cloud name. There is no tagging between them.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
So now I'm starting it. So once I start, it'll pull the IP again from the pool of IP addresses. I'll talk about how you get the public IP in the networking. So now if you look at the IP, current IP and the previous IP are different. See, this IP is different, this IP is different. You can see that. This is 165 subnet, this is 154 subnet, this one. They're different subnet. Network is same, but subnets are different. How do I say this is a different subnet? I'll talk about that. Don't worry. We'll spend time there.
Ravi, one question here. So when you
Yeah.
said stop VM from the portal, it stopped the service and automatically deallocated the VM, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is
That's
no something like just stopping the VM without deallocating. It's not possible, right?
no, we have the option. I'm going to come to that point.
Oh, okay.
We'll go step by step. Like this is a scenario, that's why I wanted to cover this, then come back to without a deallocation also we can stop it. We have the options.
Okay.
So we are expanding a disk, we need a VM deallocation for that. See, VM deallocation we will do for three reasons. One is a VM decommissioning. When we have to decommission a VM, we don't want a VM anymore. That project approvals are also given to decommission. First, we will deallocate for 2 weeks, then we destroy the VM. That is one thing where we will deallocate it. When we deallocate, CPU memory will be released, which is a 70 to 80% cost contributor. But see, the 90%, 80 to 90%, or 70 to 90% in between, the VM cost only the CPU memory. Computing cost is only 70 to 80% basically. Licensing, OS licensing, SQL Server licensing is nothing in front of that computing power basically, because you will not pay anything when the CPU memory given to the cloud. Like there is no licensing cost, there is nothing. Only you'll pay for the storage. So cost of VM you'll drastically bring it down when you deallocate. So we will talk about, we will deallocate the pre-prod servers for some reason, and stop and start during the night and during the day. We used to work with one of the client. I'll talk about that in the automation. Leave that part for now. You'll confuse. But if you wanted to expand a disk, you have to deallocate a VM simply. Now,
Sir,
as we
how
are,
about data actually? Suppose we want to go for disk expansion, we have data files and log file resided in the drive. So when we deallocate anything will happen to data or log
No, no, no,
files.
no, no. See, when you deallocate it, it is releasing the locks, but not the ownership. If you go to the disk, even you deallocate, the ownership is still there on the drives, whatever the drives it has. You don't lose
Okay.
anything at all.
Okay.
So you don't lose anything at all. When you bring it online, it'll get all of the drives as it is. You don't lose any single byte.
Okay, sir.
Right.
If you are
Yeah.
unable to connect with the VM, so generally in on-premises servers, we will contact the Wintel team. So during the same scenario, if we are facing the same scenario here also, what we can do? Still,
Right.
after
That is a scenario we have a discussion if the VM is hung. Okay. VM is stuck. Then what we do to recover it? We will talk about as a scenario. We have a discussion in this module itself, VM administration. I have the discussion. That is why boot diagnostics should be enabled. If the VM is hung, for what reason it is hung? How do you recover the VM out of to recover that hung status? We can do ourselves, but I'll tell you my experience how we can recover the VM when it is hung. No need to go to anyone to the cloud and all. We have the options to recover. So that I'm going to talk about as a scenario.
But in the real world, Ravi, will there be a separate team to take care of the Windows level stuff, or the SQL DBA will be doing that also?
Yes, actually, Windows team need to take care of that. See, what we are doing actually in our environment, Windows team is very less for us, for a cloud team. As initial days, we don't had this control, but we are working 7 years for the same product, same client. So we got the full control infra level also. If new project comes, we just will ask that, what is a subnet where the server need to go? Okay, that's it. The rest of the things we will deploy the servers. We know that what configurations we wanted, what RAM model we wanted. We will collect the data from the client. We will directly deploy the servers straight away. So we don't need infra help at all. Storage team help, our Hyper-V team help, backup team. No one. We will do end-to-end support.
But in general, if it's a large company where you are supposed to be working as a
Right, right. You'll
D-
find you'll have infra team. Yes,
okay.
but the more knowledge you have, the more involvement you can show up. So we have a knowledge now. We are doing it. If you don't have a client, also have to hire another Windows people. Lot of people. We have people, but not too many. Basically, they have their own work. So here to manage it, if you are working too long, then you'll become an architect. Right? Slowly you'll become an architect. When you work as an architect, you instruct everywhere. In fact, to the team what to do, what not to do, kind of. So if it is small client, this all will help you out anyway. If it is a bigger client, maybe you are working with the only SQL side, you will only handle the SQL side. You don't go to the disk expansion. You don't go for adding the drives and all that as a SQL DBA. But when you work with a different client, different expectations will be there. There, this will help you out. Releasing the logs to the cloud means log drive will be given back to the cloud. No, no, no. I mean, it is releasing the locks means when the system is online, it is not letting us to expand. Okay, it is releasing the lock on the drive. That doesn't mean that it is releasing the mapping. Mapping is there, but not actively locking the drive basically. When it brings up, it will read the file basically automatically. It will read the disk and then come online. So now, if you look at the drives, as we have expanded, let's quickly see that how it is expanded. Right. You see this 50 GB unallocated space here? We expanded 250 GB to 300. You have to extend the value. Extend it, next, next, finish. That's it. Windows team also will do the same thing. Extend, extend, hit next, finish. That's it. Now you go to here, you'll see that reflected. So it is 250. I'll refresh. It will become a 300. See, 299, 249 to 299. And the log drive here is 100 to 150. It got increased because you increase the storage in the cloud this way. So adding the drives to the existing VM, extending the drive, extending the existing drive. Is it clear, everyone? Is it
Yes,
clear?
Ravindra.
Right. There is one more shortcut, guys. I'll tell you this big shortcut. So try to understand. We use it for the large servers, this kind of shortcuts. So assume a case this install drive is not required. And what we have done is an extra drive. We loaded a lot of backups here. So this is a good concept. Try to follow. SQL the data, SQL backups maybe. SQL backups and some sample data. Test. This is a test file. Operation. Something what I'm just creating. I'm just giving some text on that file. So I'm going to make multiple copies. And now you have this data. You wanted to migrate this data to other server. So this entire drive is just added just because you wanted to migrate the data from one server to other server. You create the drive on the server, load the data here, and detach this drive from this VM and attach on the target. You can migrate a large volume of data without a copy. This is a big shortcut in the cloud VMs. You can use this a big shortcut. We used this many a times, in fact. When we had to copy TBs of data, attach a disk, take the backup in the disk and detach and attach on the target. This is what is we are doing it now. So install drive, assume a case you attached this disk and you took all the large backups and you wanted to move to pre-prod, which is in the same region. That is important thing. So now what I'll do, I'm going to detach. There is an option, it is online detach. You can do detach, click on this, this X symbol or cross symbol, you click on this, it is gone. It is gone from this VM. When you detach, the ownership also will be gone. So I'm saving it. As soon as I save it, the disk will be gone from here. You see this, it will disappear. It is gone. It is gone as well as it released the ownership also at the same time on the drive. So now if you go to the disk here, you'll see that ownership is removed because I detached from the VM. It's not deallocation, it's a detachment. This ownership will be taken away. It will become empty. Observe this. This is very important. We use as a shortcut. See, it is empty now. See, there is no ownership. Now, the same drive, I wanted to move to different drive, different server, in fact, because that has a big backups. If I wanted to migrate the backup, I have to go through the blob as per the recommendation. This is shortcut actually. You can copy the data to the blob, from the blob again to the VM. That is a huge time taking process. It is a 10 TB. You can move from one server to other server within 1 hour using this method. If you have a disk, data is ready. Taking the backup, it will take time, 10 TB. That is a different story. I have a 10 TB data in one drive. I wanted to move this one server to other server. How do I move? Generally, it has to go through the blob. It is a network storage. Blob is a network storage in the cloud. So you moving to the blob again is time taking process. Moving to the target VM is also time taking process. So now I detached, I took the backup on the local drive. The drive is only attached for the taking the backup. Then detach, attach on the target. So I'll connect to other VM to show this. This is a huge shortcut when you have to move bulk data within the VMs, only VMs. It does not go to the pass model again. There are shortcuts to follow to make your job easy. I'm going to talk about shortcuts today. That's why I said these are all helpful for you to do your job. There are multiple ways we can do this actually. We'll see this. Follow these methods. This will help you someday. When you work, you have to things make it so fast, then this will help you out. So now if I
Ravi,
look at here, yeah, go ahead.
this feature is available only in IaaS model.
Yes, IaaS model, that's correct. Only in the IaaS
Okay,
model.
PaaS is not applicable in this
No,
feature.
no. PaaS is different story because they are not handling with the VMD case. The VMDK access, you don't have it. You cannot attach, you cannot detach there. It is something it does in the background for you. So you don't control, that is where it won't work. But VM, you have the control. That's why you are able to do this.
Okay. So
So now,
90%,
yeah, go ahead.
most of the things handled by only IaaS only in
Yes,
our
and both actually depends. I'll talk about that. I'll do the conclusion. When to go for the PaaS model, when to go to the IaaS model. There are a lot of reasons why we will switch here to there and there to here. We will talk about both have advantage and disadvantage. So you have to look at the more of advantage side when it comes to the requirement.
Okay.
So now, if you look at here, a disk which does not have ownership can be attached on top of any other VM. That's a good thing. So attach existing, don't create it. Attach existing. The existing which doesn't have the ownership will show in here. SQL VM01 install. It is showing here because it doesn't have the owner as of now, right? It is 50 GB capacity drive. Let it be added like that. I'm saving it. This new drive which I'm attaching on this new server will get attached with all the data in it. It is formatted already. It is ready to use drive. You get all the data that drive has. So this way, whenever you have, let me tell you the scenario. I mean, how do you use it basically when it comes to the large files? Basically, you have a AVM and BVM, which is A is a production, B is a pre-prod. Okay, you just need to be in region, same region. That's the important thing here. So now you have a too big backup drive, or else you have taken the backups of from like data drive, log drive. It's too big, and you took the backup here, SQL backup, and you wanted to move these backups to here. So you are detaching here, attaching it here straight away, and then restoring on this one. So moving that large file made your job easy with the help of detach attach method. Is that clear? It is a shortcut for us to move the large volume of data. Detach attach method. You're not copying it, you're mapping the drives itself, one drive on the like detaching one on one server and attaching another other server, and take the data straight away from that as a local drive. Is it clear, all of you? Say something. All right,
So suppose if the servers are residing in two data centers, means two data centers, and
you have to
two regions.
you have to move the drive with the PowerShell. There is a command for that. Then you have to do this. It's within the region, there is no problem, but if it is a different region, you have to move the drive, copy the drive there.
So how about the speeds for attaching the drive in the other region?
How
Speed will be the same, or speed will be the same, like we move the drive from one
if
VM
it
to another
see,
VM,
if
right?
it is
In the
a
same
different
region.
region, if it is a different region, go through the blob only. Blob is the best solution. You don't need to
Okay.
attach basically. Data export the data direct to blob and read the data directly from the blob. I'll talk about that in the migrations part. SQL migrations. We will read the data directly from the blob. SQL Server can take the backup into the blob, read the backup from the blob straight away. You don't need to take the local and move it kind of. When it is within the region, this advantage can be taken. Generally, pre-prod prods all will be in the same region. There it will work. But you are moving entire different region itself. That is kind of a migration, right? So that will follow different thing. That comes under migrations, basically. Okay. We'll discuss. Don't need to worry. That topic will be covered. What you asked. It's a valid question. So now one more case, guys. I don't want this drive to be moved. I don't want this, but I wanted here the same drive. So here we detached and attached. That is not the requirement now. I wanted the source drive to be there, but it has to be copied here, the next discussion. So let me do that also as another scenario. So now I have SQL logs. The same data I'll copy here where I have installed. Oh, install drive is gone, right? Fine. Anyway, I'll make here some data SQL logs. Just follow this scenario also. So all this will help you. Testing. There's some whatever it is. I'm just doing it. So empty file is not considered as a file. That's why I'm loading some data. You have to have some empty directory also won't be considered as a directory. It won't copy the directory, empty directory, which doesn't have any data. So now I wanted to migrate, I wanted to, take a copy of this drive and move it to a new server. I wanted to keep as it is, this drive, but I wanted to make a copy of it in the target server. That is a scenario. So it is not a SQL or data file direct drive. When the SQL is running, if you take the disk snapshot, you cannot attach the files on the target. So there is a process, guys. I'll tell you one more thing as a scenario. So you have the prod server. You don't have a pre-prod assume case. This is a scenario. You have a prod and you don't have a pre-prod at all. That's how people operated. Now they wanted pre-prod. Maybe they have only dev server, but they don't have a staging server, or they don't have a QA server. They wanted to build it from the prod server, a new server right now. What is the quickest way of doing it? If at all, it has to be done within a day. It is a 20 dB data, or 10 TB data you have it, but you wanted to build the server, entire server within 4-5 hours. They are asking. You can do that. It is possible in the cloud. You have to shut down the production server for that, if at all they're asking that way. When you shut down the SQL server, it releases the logs on the files, right? When the SQL server is running, you cannot copy paste a SQL database basically. You know that, right, everyone? What I mean to say, let me show in my laptop. I mean, this is a limitation, you need to know that. Where this database is sitting. Let me see this database or this database. When the SQL is using the files, you cannot copy the files, you cannot delete the files, you cannot move the files. Anything you cannot do. If I look at here, this is where the files are, right? So let me see. This is the directory where the files are, right? Now I wanted to delete this. Can I delete this? Yes or no? SQL is using the files. Can I delete?
No.
No.
No, you cannot delete. It will throw the error. The file, you can use it. Any privilege does not delete the file at all. But at the same time, can I copy these files?
No.
Is it possible?
No.
No, you cannot. You cannot copy even. So now if I go to here, maybe I'll give a test folder. If I'm trying to do, it will throw the error. The file cannot be copied because it is used by the SQL server. So when the SQL server is reading the files, you cannot copy, you cannot move, you cannot delete also. There is no operation is allowed basically. So now the case is like I have a production server. I wanted to build a pre-prod server. I have the drives. So I can take the disk snapshot. I can build the same disk on this target. Good enough. But when the SQL server logs the files, you take the disk snapshot. When you are attaching the files, it won't attach because there is no detachment is done when you took the snapshot. So you have to shut down the SQL server, take the disk snapshot, and same disk snapshot will be added on the target. Then you install the same SQL Server version here and attach all the files. You don't need to take the backup restore. Instantly you can build entire environment in another server. But till you take the snapshot, you have to stop the SQL Server. You guys following? Let me do it. I have a disk in the cloud. I wanted to make a copy of this drive on the other server. I'm not entirely detaching, attaching. I need a copy of this drive. So how do I do it? Go to the drive. There is something called create a snapshot. Online, it is an online operation anyway. Disk no need to be detached and all that. But when the SQL server is running, it will keep the files locked. So you have to shut down and generate the snapshot so that you can attach directly on the target. Create the snapshot. I'm creating a disk snapshot. So SQL VM01 log drive something. I'm giving it full copy. I'm making it. And I'll make it a standard hard disk. Okay, and encryption will be done. Everything will be encrypted, of course. Public endpoints is fine. I'm creating a a disk snapshot. A disk is already there. It is creating a snapshot of it basically. We are not touching or doing anything on the source. We are taking a backup of it kind of thing. So now there is something called a snapshot. There is a service called Snapshot. Under Snapshot, you'll find all the disk snapshots. So we generated a snapshot. The snapshot will be shown here. Take some time. It did the job anyway. Snapshots are so quick in the cloud. See, it is created. Now this snapshot I wanted to attach on the VM02 on this one. Can I attach straight away? No, you cannot. You have to convert the snapshot into disk format. Next. So create a disk. A disk I'm creating. Follow this carefully. SQL VM02, where I'm going to attach on the VM02. So I am going to give this target server name. Log drive, whatever it is, you can give any name, doesn't matter. The source is actually our snapshot. You have to pick up the snapshot and convert the snapshot into actually this hard disk, and then it was a 200 at 150 GB, I guess. If I'm giving 100, it will throw the error. The value must be 150 GB. The source drive is actually 150 GB. It has to be either, it should be the same or it should be higher. I can go with the 200 also. It accepts. So click it OK. I'm creating the snapshot out of the, I am creating the drive out of the snapshot. I'm converting the snapshot into a disk now. Okay. Review and create. Please stop me if you have a confusion here. I'll do it again. So this we have done once. We had a very big system. They wanted a pre-prod, and we did it within 4 or 5 hours. We took the production server down during the maintenance window. It had a maintenance window. Then we took the snapshots and made the SQL server online. In the background, we converted and made the pre-prod within a day. Very big server, in fact, that was. So now the disk will be converted. Let's see that it will come online. Right, it is coming. See here? It doesn't have the ownership yet because we did not give the ownership to anything. Now, if I go to the virtual machine VM02, I'm going to assign that drive. This will take a little time to get reflected. You have to wait. It won't show immediately. It takes some time. So that's usual thing. So now if you go to VM02, I'm getting a copy of log drive from that server to this server. So what I mean to say here, guys, with the diagram, you have the data drive, log drive, and you are taking the backup. It is becoming 10 TB backup. Okay. It is a standard edition. Maybe you don't have a compression kind of. Anyway, it is a too big backup file. Taking the backup and moving it to will take time. So they don't have that time. You wanted to make a copy of the machine. Okay, make it is equivalent to copy only. You're not doing anything. You are installing the same version what the prod has in the pre-prod, and you are taking the snapshot, converting the disk, attaching to the VM, and then attach on the target straight away. No need to do the backup restore. This will be a huge shortcut. Maybe you wanted to build a dev server to test server. This scenario is best useful case. You can shut down the dev server. They'll allow you to do that. They wanted to build a new server which has a large volume of data. Shut down the SQL server on the dev server, take the disk snapshot and convert into disk and attach in the target, and all the files are there in the disks. See, install the SQL server same version on the target, attach all the files one after the other. So that way your job becomes very easy to build entire one environment for the environment. For if you have a production and dev but you don't have a QA server, you wanted to build out of the dev, maybe you can quickly create it within a day, though it has a 20 TB 30 TB data. You guys following what I'm trying to say? Say
Yes,
something.
yes, we are following.
Right, thank you. So now I'll do this. So let's go to the it will come up most probably now.
Ravi, in this example, you said we have to install the SQL Server on the destination, right? So what if
Right.
we want to use an existing image of the OS and SQL combination?
You can use it. The problem is actually master database holds the old server details in it. that will be a problem. You can change the server name by giving the spend square, no, change server name something. There is a stored proc, but that create mess basically. You can do entire snapshot to snapshot as well, but the server name will be new, but the SQL server will still running with the old name only because master database holding that name.
Is that the only problem? We can always change the add server, drop server, right?
Right, that something you can do it actually. For production it is not recommended. Free products you can do that. Take the entire VM snapshot and rebuild it. That is also possible, what you're trying to say.
Okay.
Possible scenario.
Yeah, thanks.
So now it should come. Right, it's still not showing. It takes some time actually. That's a bad thing. Disk SQL log VM02 log drive. There's 200 GB capacity. It is there actually. It is up. Why it is not detecting? It don't take too long basically. But anyway, did I keep it in the same region? Right, region is same. West India. Fine. I mean, these are all shortcuts to use infra site, so to make your job easy. It is still taking time. It does. It takes some time, but not this long. Takes a minute to reflect. Right, it is reflected now. Now I am going to save this. As soon as you save it, you'll get the drive here. So you moved. It is not like a detached task. You took the copy of the drive as a snapshot, converted a snapshot into disk, and then you attached on the target. So you get all the data what it was having it. So this way you get the data files, log files, and install the same version, and then attach all the files. Attaching does not take too long, right? So that way you prepared entire big server within a short window, right? Within a short window, you can build entire VM using the disk snapshots. So now, if you don't want any disk, example, you created a new drive. After that, you don't want this drive. Temporarily, you added a storage, and you wanted to remove that storage entirely. So go into the disk, and I don't need this disk anymore right now. Okay, good. Click on that and save it. It will be gone. The ownership will be released on that disk. Once it is released, the disk won't get deleted. You have to delete it manually to not to get the bill for that. So if you don't delete, as long as you don't delete, the disk will be there in the disk services forever, and you keep paying the bill. Though you don't use it or using it, it doesn't matter to the Microsoft. You block that storage and you have to pay for it. So disks are like that. So you have to time clean up the drives which are not owned by the VMs, because for some temporary reason you created a huge drive and you did the purpose, you removed from the VM and you forgot to delete, still you get the bill. You have to come to the disk here and then find the drive and delete it. This must be followed. If not, you keep paying the bill for it.
So one more thing, Ravi. What if it is a like opposite scenario where you deleted a disk and you want it back? Is there a undo or anything like that?
You need to have a snapshots for that. When the server
Suppose
snapshot.
we don't have anything. Will Microsoft help to
No,
recover
no,
a deleted disk?
no, that cannot be, disk cannot be protected. Microsoft won't help here. You need to have the snapshots.
Okay.
You think that the drive is very important. Before that, you take the snapshot. Any drive you can take the snapshot, in fact. So it
So there
is
is no way to recover even if you open a support ticket or anything.
no. They don't support that because it's something you deleted it. You deleted it.
Okay.
If it is a PaaS environment, they'll
Past
support.
model,
But
yeah. Okay, got it.
PaaS environment, you have a protection. For everything, they have a protection. They have the control. You are running on their direct infrastructure. Here they leased something. You are working on it. Whatever you do is final because you leased it. That is not that like that. They have their direct infrastructure. You're running on their direct infrastructure.
Okay.
Getting the difference, right?
Yep. Thanks.
Right. So that way it is. So now let's move to the further discussions, guys. Anyone have question? Please let me know. Don't keep quiet because these are all important. When something is broken, you have to run your brain to to bring back things quickly, kind of. That way it will help you out. And let's talk about the next thing. Someone not unmute, please mute. I mean, if you have a question, please ask. Not an issue. If you don't have a question, yeah. Let's move. So if you come to here, I'm creating a new machine. Follow this. All are important what I'm discussing now. If I look at this one, and I mean, I'm creating one more server, and there is something called disk sizes, and this number of disks a VM can support, I said, right? I choose this VM, it can support 4 drives, extra 4 drives. If I create 4 drives, fifth drive I cannot create. The server can support up to 4 drives only. If you look at the little bigger one, 2 CPUs and 7 GB, it can support up to 8 extra drives, excluding the OS. Don't count the OS, don't count the temporary. So it can support 8 extra drives. So the purpose of the VM may be, I have a 10 TB data. 10 TB data you should not keep in 1 or 2 drives. You must stripe it. You have to create a file group, create the files. Each file should go into different drive, so that data striping can happen in the background. Automatically, it does the data equally loaded into all the drives automatically. Data striping you can do like that. So that way, when you have a big databases, you definitely need more data drives, so that data distribution can happen. IO distribution goes well in the background. If you're keeping entirely, one disk can grow up to 32 TB, doesn't mean that you are keeping all the data in one drive and then making it 32 TB data. You never do that. If you do that, you're gone. This performance never scale up. Even in the on-prem also same concept. You should not go beyond 2 TB data in one drive. If you go it, there will be consequences for sure, because IO won't scale, and you have a good configured server, but still it doesn't matter. IO is not doing the best, it's not retrieving the data on time. So system resources are waiting. They are ready to process the CPU and memory, but data is not ready yet in the buffer to work on it. So what the system can do? It cannot do anything. So you have to stripe the data. When the data is more, you have to stripe with the multiple drive layout. That's something you must follow. That is the reason we go for the lot of number of drives for the data. Once
So
VM is created, just a question, yeah. Once
one
VM
more
is
thing,
created,
with
yeah, go ahead.
within a drive, like is there any best practice? How many files we should use? For example, data file. Can we have a data file, one file itself, like 1 TB or 500 GB or something like that? Or is there any best practice?
There is no
Uh,
best practice as such, but you need to track your IO capacity, how big, how well your disk IO is actually. Based on that, you can do a more and more workload. You need to monitor the IO stalls. You have a read stalls, write stalls, average stalls. You have a DM, you can find it. You need
so
to
by having
keep track.
more files,
Mhm.
will it improve the performance or?
Yeah, of course, it will striping the data to multiple drives, right?
No. Within
So
the drive, can we have multiple
no. Within the drive, you are making again the same target.
same
So there
thing?
is no
Okay.
meaning in it. So what I mean to say, you go to database, you go to create a file group. Let me quickly tell you this. You create a file group. Maybe I'm creating a test file group just for the sake. Okay, and this is default anyway. Okay, Adinarana. Yeah, I'll share the video. So now I created this extra. Now if I go to the files, I'm adding a new file. I'm adding a new file under a test file group. When I'm adding each file should go to different drive. So
Okay.
whenever you are loading the data will get loaded into multiple drives in the background, so that
Okay.
your IO will get striped out. You're hitting one database in the background, multiple drives working for you.
Okay.
Getting
So
the
if it is
point?
the same drive and multiple files, it doesn't make
No.
any
Again,
difference.
you're doing the same thing. There is no meaning in
Okay.
it. You need to load each file into different drive. There, the IO different machine, different drives will give the IO, right? So
Correct.
consolidated, you get the very high IO for that. So creating
Okay.
more files and keeping in the same drive is equivalent to one file only. There is no meaning in
Yes,
it.
yes. Yeah, actually, in the current like project, they have a limitation. Like they suggest only 100 GB on each file. even if it is in the same drive. So
That's useless. They are the worthless guys then who are recommending it. Useless.
I
You're
I think that the reason what they said was to move it to cloud, the GCP. It was easy to move or something like that.
maybe they wanted to copy the files. Yeah, maybe
Mm.
their plan in the initial phase itself. That's a great thing if they wanted to have it, but ultimately that is not fetching any benefit to you in terms of IO. Maybe you have a
Right.
plan to move to the cloud. That time you copy file by file. Maybe if it is 1 TB file, if it fails, you have to start entirely from 1 TB. If it is 100 TB
Correct.
file, you can reattempt quickly. That way they'll get the benefit, but currently you're not getting any benefit
Correct.
that I
Okay.
can say.
Right.
So once the VM is created, one size, can we change it later, created without any destroying? Yeah, that is what the VM scaling up, right? So you can change it to any size that you wanted, in fact. So VM can be scaled up and scaled down. Okay, I'll talk about that quickly. Harini, just give me this point. I'll finish this and I'll come back to that. So look at this. You have the size of a VM and the number of drives it can support, right? It is given. So the number of drives as well as temporary storage. You see this one. What is the VM we created? 2 CPUs, 4 GB RAM. Temporary drive, it comes at free of cost, which is the SSD drive. And this is a paging drive. As you go with a higher size, the disk size will get increased. Okay. And one more thing, uh, the disk anyway you understood, right? Based on the size of the VM, the number of disk will change, the temporary drive will be changed, right? As it is giving 8 means you can go up to 8 drives only. Beyond you cannot go for it. If you wanted to go for more than 8 drives, you have to go to the next size. That's it. 4 CPs, 14 GB RAM. This can support up to 16 drives, in fact. Okay, 16 extra drives, excluding the temp drive and C drive. This must be known. And there is a question I wanted to quickly talk. So how do you scale changing the size of a VM? You can change family to family also. I deployed a VM in the compute family for database by mistake. I wanted to bring it back to memory optimized. Yes, you can bring it back. It's just that one downtime is required. So go to the size. Okay. When you go to the size, I'm in the general purpose. If I wanted to switch it to memory optimized computers, I can go to any of the memory optimized computer, resize. That's it. You can change not only a CPU memory, you can change the family also. There is no issue. You don't need to redestroy. You just to scale up the VM. That's it. Is it clear, Harni?
Yeah, Ravi.
Yeah. So you know it is something like scaling up a VM on demand when it comes, requirement model, right? Right. There is some topics which will go more than 10 minutes. What I'm going to talk next. Anyway, let's talk about any other thing. So now I'll pick up any small topic for now. Right. Resetting the password. Let's finish this. I mean, this is small topic. SQL VM01. If you look at here, I go to the computer management here and then look at the users. I mean, we have a lot of topics. Tomorrow we'll spend time again. Go to the groups, administrator. I had the Ravinder user. By default, I did to the local administrative group. I forgot this username. Assume a case. I wanted to create a new user altogether. For this, you need to have a privilege to do it, basically. VM security administrator, there's a privilege actually for this. That privilege you must have it. That will come in the identity management. We'll talk about. I forgot the username itself. I'm not able to log into the VM now. I wanted to create a new user altogether. Yes, we can do that. Maybe I wanted to create a different user just for the sake of discussion. So just I wanted to create example Ranjit, okay, and I'm giving the password. Right, I'm updating it. As soon as I update, this user will create it automatically and add it to the local group automatically, and I can use that user to talk to the VM. Though I forget the existing user, I can create altogether new user. I can talk to the VM with the admin privileges. So just wait, it will updating it. You see that user is showing up in this list. Not yet. I mean, not only you can, if at all I wanted to reset the password, I can reset. We'll quickly do it. This is a small topic I wanted to finish because we have few minutes. We have a good topics to discuss, but that will take time. Right, see, Ranjit got added. Now, if I wanted to log into this VM using Ranjit, yes, I can log in because Ranjit also is authorized user. See, it is loading his session also, right? Right. So my username is resetting the password of existing user. Let's complete that also. So my account was Ravinder. My password was this. This is the password. I'll quickly verify in front of you. So I'm here in this one. This is my Ravinder account. What I logged in. See Ravinder. I'm going to log off and I'll re-log in with Ravinder just to show that my password is working. What password is working? Password what I kept in the notepad. I'll not type the password. I'll just copy paste. Show that it is a current password. It is going through. Now what I wanted to change that account password. I know the account name, but I don't know the password. Then you can reset it. So the resetting the password, I'll change it back to 8, 9, 10 something. I'm adding extra thing. Reset the password. So changing the existing user password, if you forget the user itself, you can add a new user and connect. You don't lock yourself anyway. That's there. I mean, this is something is knowledge. You need to know it. So now my session is this, right? So I'll log out again. Okay. And log in with the old password first. The old password was this. Okay. This is the old password, what I had. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to log in with the old password. It is updated. The password got updated. It's Ravinder only, fine. So now if I'm giving the old password, it does not go. But as I reset the password to this new one, it'll go through, which means resetting the password is done. So this way you can recover the account, the default account which was there along with the VM. We used one account, right? When we created a VM, that account recovery is very simple. If even you forget the password or you forget the account also itself, you forget it, I mean you forgot, then you can create a new account as a infrastructure admin. They can do it. If it is locked for some reason, they can use and enter into the machine and recover what they were looking at. These options are not there in the on-prem. Okay, they have to go to the Hyper-V panel and then the different things they'll do it. But cloud is so simple. Anybody can do it. If a product guy can do all of this, not only infra expert not needed here. You have the exposure to everything. You have a storage layer, networking layer, hardware, every layer you can interact and do it your job so simply. There is nothing, so expertise is not required. So that way we get the more control as a product guy. Okay. So we have a lot of interesting topics, guys, and the VM side. I did not finish yet. We can automate a lot of things. Tomorrow we will talk about how do I build a VM which get all the deployments straight away. Like I need a disk layout like this. I wanted this file to be there in the VM by default. And all the standards you deploy, take the golden image and you build the VM from that image. That is the reason We don't ask Windows team to build a VM for us in our environment. We have our own templates. We will use a template and build a VM, and then VM will get all what we wanted straight away. And we install the product and give it to the people who whatever they wanted. So we will make that kind of automation. We will see a lot of other scenario-based discussions tomorrow. Okay, so any questions before I stop the video?
So regarding the attach and detach the drive, so we don't have any SQL server, so that's why we have not stopped the source server, right? Otherwise,
Right,
we need to
right.
stop the.
That's
So
correct.
here,
Yes.
like for increasing the drive and this attach discharge, we need a downtime, right? Both
Yes.
scenarios.
Attaching, detaching, you don't need a downtime as long as you don't have a dependency. I mean, if you have some files in it which need a service restart, then you need a downtime. But if you have a drive which is just a backup drive and there is nothing is impacted, you can detach, attach straight away. So what
Yes,
is there in the drive that matters?
yes.
Yeah.
And maybe a generic one, like so if we have installed the enterprise edition, so if we
Mm,
take a snapshot of that server, so
mm.
that will becomes under the license based or non-license based whenever we take the snapshot of the server for using
License,
the
that is a
non-production server.
license. That is like another VM, another same license is applied, is a licensed, of course.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So need to do this. Yeah. So there are two Naresh I have seen today. Is it different Naresh? Same Naresh, right? I'm stopping the video.